Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided. This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy is made possible in part by a donation from Firefly Credit Union. Firefly is the new name of U.S. Federal Credit Union, which has proudly served the financial needs of the Greater Twin Cities community since 1925. At Firefly, we guide our members forward and give them the power to chase dreams by delivering the financial solutions they need to get ahead. From checking accounts to mortgages, we'll light the way. We are Firefly Credit Union, and this is Life Illuminated. And Dr. Charles Crutchfield of award-winning Crutchfield Dermatology in Eagan, acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. A Minnesota native who trained at the Mayo Clinic, Dr. Crutchfield personally treats all patients and states that experience counts and quality matters. Crutchfield Dermatology. Look good, feel great, with beautiful skin.
Hello, welcome back to Access to Democracy. I'm Holly Jenkins, your guest host today, and I'm here with a return guest, no stranger to Access to Democracy, Rick King.
Hi, Holly.
Rick, hi, nice to have you here.
It's great to be here with you.
Thank you. We're looking forward to talking to Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Thomson Reuters. So in addition to that role, a quick look at your LinkedIn page will show that you have a commendable and lengthy list of external boards and commissions that you are also engaged with. So I want to start and just ask you first, how do you have time for all this? And what is the value that you gain from all these, being involved with all these external organizations, and how do you bring that back to Thomson Reuters?
Well, it's a good question, Holly. I think the time for it is a company that wants you to participate civically, and then having a great team so that you know when you have to step away for one of these things that the right things are going to happen, so the team is highly functional and on the right goals and taking care of the regular business. And the third thing, and this is the one you negotiate at home, it's not just about time away from work, it's time away from home. So you have to have a understanding spouse, family, whatever it happens to be. And I'm lucky, I've got all three of those things, and that's what gives me the time. And you know, I think the bring back for the company and why they believe in this is that I get to interact with some of the top leaders in businesses in the community here, and those tend to be our customers as well. And this is one of the places where I'm probably sitting at the table on one of these boards with CEOs from companies that we do business with. And it's a great way for us to know more about their business and them, to understand that we're one of their customers and they're probably one of ours. And you know, when our sales team needs some help getting into a certain element of that business, you've got a high level of contact, and that really helps. So our company believes in the mission of helping the community, but there's this pullback that's really great. And then for me, it's knowing these people. It's a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, no, it's a valuable on, like you said, a personal and a professional level. And
Exactly.
so you talked about that just bringing the fact that Thomson Reuters appreciates when employees get involved with other community organizations and whatnot. What role do you see Thomson Reuters playing here in Eagan as far as corporate and community involvement? You know, there's a lot of benefits to having this international company here, and how do you view your role in community involvement?
Well, I am the senior person here in the site. We've got about 6,000 employees here. It's the largest site in the world for us.
Wow.
And so it I think is important for us as a big company to realize that we're made up of a whole lot of people that live in the community, and different communities, mostly in Dakota County, but all over. One time we looked at our congressional map here in Minnesota and found out we had people that lived in every congressional district, which is kind of amazing. So we are spread around a little bit too, but dominantly in Dakota County. And therefore, what brings people to our business here is a strong community. You know, the amenities, important things like education, parks, the recreational activities, sports activities, cultural activities, things like that, as well as a thriving business community. So I think if you want to have that because you want to locate and keep your business there and grow it there, you are sort of under an obligation to help it be that way and get better that way. And that's why I think it's important for us to do it. And our company has a volunteer policy that allows every individual automatically to take 16 hours a year and volunteer during regular work time. Our employees give much more time to that because they do it outside of hours, and they'll take their own time to do it and so forth. But it's important that we give back.
Yeah. No, and I think what you're saying is that if you're going to be in a community, it benefits your organization just as much as the community by reinvesting in the area. In addition to the community engagement, can you talk a little bit about Thomson Reuters Foundation, sort of on an international level of service and giving?
Sure.
Is that anything that you can elaborate a little bit on?
Oh yeah, sure. The Thomson Reuters Foundation, it's different than a lot of foundations and the approach that it has. So I'd like to describe what's fairly common with corporate foundations, and then what we're different and how we're different. And I'm not saying we're better, we're just different, because a lot of people think we're the other kind. A lot of places, company foundations are where the money for grants and things like that are generally given to some of the entities in the community. And we do that a different way. We do that through the actual corporation, generally speaking. Our foundation works with very big global initiatives. We deal with entities that work on representation for people that can't afford attorneys globally. We work on human trafficking issues globally. So there are things that are very big that impact the world community that our foundation puts at the root of that. The one that we deal with in legal is called trust law. That's an actual entity that involves a lot of people. They work with the UN on the trafficking issue. So it's sort of a big global approach from the Thomson Reuters Foundation, and then each entity, each location is allowed to do the things that are appropriate for its size and what its employee base is interested in, what its community needs. So that's where a lot of the giving and a lot of the volunteer time comes from.
Okay, and where is that foundation funded fully through Thomson Reuters, or is that how are they funded?
It is funded through Thomson Reuters.
Okay.
Every year there's an allocation that the company makes to the foundation, and then they make an additional allocation to support the kind of activities that are done at each of the locations.
Okay, sounds wonderful. You mentioned that the Eagan location, 6,000 employees, one of your largest in the world. And as an international company, I mean, what is it about Eagan and Dakota County that keeps you here, that benefits you? You mentioned some of the community, the education level and the parks and just the high quality area that we have. Are there other benefits or qualities of Dakota County that keeps you here in Eagan?
Yeah, I think Dakota County is a great county in the state, but I think you have to look a little bit more toward the whole metro too. There are things that our business is really interested in. We have a lot of lawyers that we've hired that work here in terms of our products for law. So there are law schools around here that create law graduates. Not everybody goes into practice or prosecution, those kinds of things. And as a litigator, people work those kind of jobs, but many people want a different kind of job, and they can work at a job like we have here. So we've got a good way to get legal expertise, which is one of the things we look for. The second thing is technology. We certainly have a great community around the metro area in technology, and so this is another attraction. So being one of the companies that is here that attracts technology workers to our area is pretty important to us. And then I think overall, I found, not being a native here, moving from Massachusetts, living in a lot of different places, that the work ethic here is pretty strong. People are willing to come and work really hard. They might be in sales, they might be doing administrative work, even these lawyers and technology people. So that's really what you're looking for, people that work hard, get things done. And then there's the skills. So there's a lot of good skill development in the higher educational institutions.
Okay. You hear that often, that the Midwest does have such a great work ethic, so that's nice to hear it qualified by you. Speaking of technology, where do you see what's going to happen next? I mean, over the last few decades, we've seen an incredible shift from print to digital, and that's all, driven by technology. So what's coming next? What is the future? Is it the world of the Jetsons coming to life, or what do you see as the next big turn of events for technology?
Well, I think what everybody can probably see, and maybe they can't imagine where it's going to go, is, you talk about the autonomous car. So the Jetsons didn't have an autonomous car,
They flew.
actually, but maybe you'll have an autonomous plane too. Actually, planes are more automated and can actually fly more
true.
autonomously than cars. I'm not saying I want them to. They can, but I think the one interesting area is definitely cars. There's an incredible amount of technology that it's growing and growing in automobiles, and part of it is the whole thing about autonomous cars. But the other part, if you think back, you might be surprised that the actual kind of radio in your car is not a radio, but it's a receiver of internet, and the internet radio is what's bringing you your stations. That you're not actually using what we would classically have called a broadcast radio. So I think these technology things, the gathering of data, the car knows how fast you're going at any point, how fast you put the brakes on, whatever. So for accident investigations, there's a lot of information there, and in fact you're starting to see the insurance companies give you discounts if you have that kind of device in there. That's not unlike having an auto alarm or a home alarm to give you a discount. So I think more and more things like that. So cars would be one thing, and that's the bigger picture is called the Internet of Things, IoT. You'll hear that on a lot of places, IoT. Internet of Things is connected cars, connected refrigerators. Maybe the refrigerator knows you didn't put back the milk, therefore the milk needs to be replaced. Therefore it sends you a list on your phone, don't forget the milk at the store. Or maybe it just orders it from the delivery service and it comes.
By robot, maybe.
Could be. It will eventually be at least an autonomous vehicle. So I think those are the things in the world, that some of the things that I think about.
And how well is Minnesota and Thomson Reuters set for competing in this next round of technical improvements? How does Minnesota compare against the coasts and other countries in maintaining a technological edge, per se?
It's always an interesting challenge. So I'm going to say I feel good about where we are, but I think I'd go back to Andy Grove, who ran Intel at one point and said only the paranoid survive, because there's always somebody developing the next thing. So there's this constant worry that maybe somebody's going to edge you out with something new and something neat that overtakes the market that you're in. But maybe all that just keeps us on our toes. Relative to technology, there's a ton of technology going on the West Coast. There's always a lot going on the East Coast. We're starting to see more in the Austin area, that type of area. So one of the challenges for the northern Midwest is to establish itself, make sure there's enough venture money, things like that. And we have a great many activities around here that are building up that make the Minneapolis, St. Paul area better than it's ever been. But it's still a long shot from the coastal areas.
Right.
And you know, when you get somebody that we try to attract here from, you know, who grew up and went to school on one of the coasts, it's a tough selling job. But all these amenities we talked about earlier, we hope that we can do our best.
Yeah.
And we do as many as we can. And mostly when we get people like that here, they like to stay because it's good, number 2 in the country for growing families, right?
Yeah,
Isn't that the
that
most
just
recent
recently,
news?
yes, and it is. And people who have, you know, if you've been born and raised here and you move away, you tend to come back. It's a good high quality of life if you can get past the chilly winters for the most part and a few mosquitoes in the summer. It's a good place
That's
to
right.
live. Speaking of though, part of Thomson Reuters' success and with credit to you is a high quality, very strong workforce. Do you see our future generation, our younger generations, are we training and giving them the tools that they need to not only succeed in a STEM technology, but motivate them to want to move into this arena? And as a former teacher and coach, I think you have a wonderful perspective. What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? How can we improve the prospect for our younger generation to move and be successful in this technology field?
I'm going to perhaps do something that might be a little bit controversial. Or I'm going to flip that question because I think what we need to do, people like me, we need to listen to that younger generation to understand what they want.
Okay.
And I could say some generalizations, but people read millennial, Gen Z, what they're interested in. You know, and I think it would be, it's hard to do these gross generalizations, but they're not going to generally be in the same company forever. And that was something that my parents' generation almost assumed they would be. Mine was more hopeful that they might be. And then you get down to the point they want to take interesting work. They're not afraid to move around. They want to make sure the place they work for is socially, in the mainstream and believes what they believe, that the company has a heart and soul. And I think these are all things that are good. So I think what we need to do and what we're doing ourselves is we listen a lot to them, and we want to move our company the way it positions itself, the way it talks about itself, what it stands for, and make sure that those are the things that these folks, the younger people, are looking for.
Okay.
So they come to us because they see, I could work there. I like that idea. They believe in things like trust law. They believe in working against human trafficking, those kinds of things. They have voluntary hours. They have flex hours. They have those kinds of things.
So it's a whole comprehensive job future. It's not just a little niche area that you see this next generation, the millennials and whatever else we want to call them,
Exactly.
more interested in.
That's what I think, and we will see. I think we have interesting work. We have interesting people that they'll work with. We have good tools. We have a nice environment. We just have to make sure they understand what we stand for, and they can see that it's consistent with their values. The company values and theirs are work together well.
Okay. How about I correct me if I'm wrong, I think you were on a broadband task force
I
for
was.
some point. Okay. And there was just even, I believe in today's Star Tribune, there's an article about broadband and border-to-border broadband in Minnesota and how much that would benefit, in particular rural areas. And if you look at the Iron Range, if we had broadband, there on a readily available basis, the impact it would have on that community would be enormous, and it would give them some economic stability and growth opportunities that aren't dependent on a boom and bust mining industry. What are the barriers to broadband border to border, and who's best positioned to break down those barriers?
Yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, I was the chair of the broadband task force that Governor Pawlenty put together in 2008, and we set the first speed goals and access goals, and they actually got adopted by the legislature.
Okay.
I'm very proud of the work, and in fact, I was just reading that report, and I sent the note to their chairperson, Margaret Anderson Kelleher. that group's done a marvelous job. Last year they updated the goals, and this year they made 2 really good recommendations. And I think their recommendation is exactly what our state should be doing. It talked about putting a reasonable amount of money annually into that and supporting the Office of Broadband Technology, which is in the administration here. So I think that's perfect. And they have laid it in with the federal government, who also has some funds available, so that there's no duplication and they're working in harmony. So it's just a really good approach. So I'd say the number one thing that the legislature can do this year is take that report seriously and hopefully do what they've asked.
Yeah. So you think it's achievable?
I do. I think we can get there. I think that I think it's important, just as you said. I think things like telemedicine, providing state services via broadband rather than having to go into local offices, give accessibility a boost, because people, particularly as they get elderly or the weather's bad, they don't want to go out and do routine state type business, whatever it happens to be. They should be able to do 99% of that if they had acceptable broadband service to their home. And telemedicine brings our best Rochester-based Mayo doctors to the home of somebody who lives in Cook.
It's just going to increase the quality of life across the board when people have better access to internet services and everything that it provides. So,
Yes. And interestingly, if you can take things off the road, then the roads become less congested. It benefits the construction requirements, and it also benefits the environment from a pollution point of view.
So would you be encouraging people to contact their legislators and say, let's make sure that this moves along?
Were I a lobbyist? No, I would definitely say,
Support
I think this is a modest amount of money that really brings the state as a leader, and then will allow all elements of our state, all areas of our state to connect equally, which I think is really important. And I know it's important to the Dayton administration as well.
So we'll encourage people to support that.
Absolutely.
Women in IT, you have been a key role in bringing more women into the IT careers at Thomson Reuters, made that a priority, and as a result, you're recognized as one of the top companies to work in for women in IT. Thank you for doing that. And going forward, do you have initiatives to either maintain or even improve your status in that regard?
We absolutely do. When we started this journey 8 or 9 years ago, our percent of women in IT was about 17%. This year we hit 30.
Oh, good. Okay.
I'll be done when we're at 50.
Okay.
I think I've said actually 51 publicly, but I really think we've got a ways to go. And what's interesting is when you compare all the big companies that you can name, and I don't want to name them publicly, we're number 2 on the list.
Excellent. Okay, that's wonderful. Has the latest, do I dare bring it up, the controversial Me Too movement or moment? I think it's more, people are starting to see it more as a movement. Has that hit Thomson Reuters at all? Has there been any, I won't even say accusations, but any new revelations that have come from that? Any new training, or is it really not a problem here?
Look, it's hard to say whether it's a problem. I know that we have a very robust code of ethics on this topic and many others. We've got a way to report things. We've got a mechanism to follow up. I don't think we've had to adjust any of that because of what we've seen. I think what we've seen is absolutely, it's just stunning and deplorable, and I'm so disappointed. I hope we don't have those things here, but if we do and we know about it, we will take swift care of it.
Well, it definitely hasn't hit the papers yet. They can't find anything, but and I agree.
Oh,
I don't
you're
think
digging
that it
for
is,
the dirt, huh?
I don't think it is everywhere. When I've seen it come up, due process has its place, and it's just hard. It comes up regularly. So with a big company, you have to wonder what's
It's
happening.
a topic of conversation here because anything in the news as a topic of conversation. And you know, I hope that our culture work and our values that we work very hard with all our employees on, because they're part of it. It's not top management pushing them down. It's the whole company. We've spent a lot of money working people through cultural activities together at all levels, and I hope there's appreciation and understanding for fair and equal treatment for everybody.
No, that's wonderful. Speaking of news every day and everywhere, you know, Thomson Reuters has, as far as I am aware, has remained above the bar on any accusations of fake news, and part of that might be just, like you said, your values, your commitment to bringing you know, gathering and disseminating information on a very nonpartisan basis, on a very honest, trustworthy, I think that I've heard the term honest broker when it comes to gathering and disseminating information. Do you think that's unique in your industry? How are you staying out of the riffraff in that, arena?
You know, so I'll start on the products. I think we provide on the products, not the news right now. I'm just going to talk about products. We provide the data that allows people to make decisions. So we want the data to be absolutely correct, and the data doesn't take a position. The data is used by people to make some decisions. Then we have Reuters News. That's one of our properties, and
thinking of.
the Reuters News ethics and beliefs are very strong. Julius Reuters, the founder of Reuters back in the mid 1800s, he brought forward a news organization that was really steeped in being accurate in terms of reporting, not taking one side or the other, and giving full treatment of things in more of a long form. And we are primarily focused on news that is interesting to the business community, because that's what we are doing. But that involves politics, world events, sports, because people like sports. And we have to play it right down the middle. And I think Reuters reporters do a fantastic job with that. We have 2 reporters that in the course of their duty in Myanmar are in jail. And this happens to us from time to time, but I have to say that we are 100% behind them. We know that our reporters work really hard to go down the middle of the road, and sometimes the middle of the road antagonizes certain regimes, and I'm so proud to have them part of our organization.
Yeah, no, it's you know, it's tough to stay out of it, but you guys have done a good job, and hopefully the whole concept of fake news is either pushing people to become more, you know, greater integrity, but you just hope it doesn't take anybody down that doesn't deserve it.
Well, you always hope that, and we've actually talked with some of these organizations that are dealing with that and offered to help them.
We have 1 minute, 30 seconds left, and I have to ask, you're a member of the Metropolitan Airport Commission. Are we ready for the Super Bowl?
We are ready for the Super Bowl. It's going to be a big crush all around.
So the airport and the Twin Cities will handle it? And who are you hoping for?
Vikings, of course.
All right. It's been great talking with you.
Thank you.
We have more to talk about, so hope we'll come back sometime.
There you go. That's how it happens.
Thank you. We'll see you next time on Access to Democracy.